Back when I was a freshman in high school, there was one number that I really did not like, the number 40. And it wasn't because I kept getting a 40 on all my tests, assignments, quizzes, and finals. Thankfully, that wasn't the case because I wouldn't be standing here alive and well talking to you guys tonight. No, it was 40 because it was the amount of community service hours that I had to do for graduation. 40 hours or 2 full days of community service, a service for a beach that I might have to clean up, when I could be taking that time to go enjoy the beach or go enjoy the theaters or enjoy anywhere else besides volunteering. Why should I volunteer and help the community? Oh, that's a really bad statement to make. And it sounds really unpleasant and selfish, but to be fair, it was. Because I did value community service as a meaningful, direct way to make the world a better place. I just did not want to do community service. It sounded really inconvenient. My perception of volunteering was limited to beach cleanups and manual labor and inconvenient tasks for me to do on a Saturday. And so when I heard the upperclassmen in the upper grades say that they did over 300 hours of community service, I would say, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you do 300 hours of manual labor on a weekend? And it was just scary to think about that way. And so I thought of community service as a noble thing to do. But it was just less exciting when it had to end up on my to-do list. Community service felt like a chore. And it felt like something that I have to do again and again. But again and again. But it was something that I knew it had to be done. And I tried my best to avoid it, but it was a graduation requirement. And so I did the next best thing, which was to find the most easiest, most simple way to do it, and that was to go through school clubs, to volunteer through the school clubs. Because I thought that if I can just find the right cause for me to be motivated, I could easily wipe out the 40 hours. And so I did that. I went to classroom trying to find a cause that fit me. But it wasn't until I started to keep going to these presentations and these facts again and again, and I started to feel really disconnected and frustrated because I couldn't find a cause that would make me want to go do 40 hours of community service. And so I felt really frustrated trying to wait for a community service cause to come to me. But the real issue and the real question that I had was not how community service fits me when I first hear about a cause. That was the wrong question that I was trying to tell myself. The real question was for me of how can I fit into community service? How can my memories and experiences that I have allow me to personally connect to community service? And that was one of the big misconceptions that I had to change. And I finally had made a switch of taking ownership of my actions and making the cause personable to me so I can find the real reason to volunteer again and again. And so that switch came in my sophomore year of high school when I found out that my aunt had colon cancer and passed away. And that loss really deeply affected my family and I, and it was just one of those moments that really emotionally changes who you are as a person. And so I did what I could do to have closure. I researched and I tried to find the connection to it of what made this thing that deeply affected my family's life and I. And so I came across pediatric cancer. And I found that pediatric cancer is the #1 leading cause of death for kids under the age of 20, and over 15,000 kids are diagnosed every single year. And I started to think about how these families were affected by the cancer, and how my family and I were affected by that cancer, and how what they must have felt when they first heard about the diagnosis, and how my family and I first felt and heard when we first heard about the diagnosis. And what was so transformative at the time was that I wasn't looking at it from an adult who had so much life ahead of him, but was also had so much life that was already been offered and been able to experience. But I was looking at it from a child whose life had just barely begun, a child like me. And that moved me because I was finally able to make a cause personal to myself for me to want to keep volunteering. And so I was able to do the volunteering through that way. When I found out that when I found out that pediatric cancer was the passionate cause that I wanted to do, I tried to think of community service not as a chore, but as a personal responsibility. And when you have that feeling of personal responsibility, you start to understand and ask yourself, how can I make a difference? How can I go and use the awareness that I had to make action? And what I came across was that school clubs was a great way for me to do it. And so I went back to the school clubs, but for some reason I came across the exact same problem that I had, which was being disconnected. And so when I was trying to find a way for me to understand how I can make a difference in my society, I just couldn't, there was no system in place that allowed me to make a difference. There was no meaningful system to continually show up again and again. And that was the second awareness bit that I found out, second misconception that I had about community service, which was that a cause cannot move on words alone. It needs the hands to serve and the feet to show up. This is very important because in our day of age, we are very aware of all the important causes and movements that help shape our lives and our world. And going back to the presentations that I tried to educate myself and I was aware of, it wasn't because the problem is that the student leaders who led these clubs did not care about the community causes that they were trying to support. No, that wasn't the case. They were genuinely trying to make a difference by trying to share awareness about the cause. And that was very powerful and very important because awareness is what transforms us and what makes us feel inspired to volunteer. But awareness can only go so far before it just stagnates within the classroom or stagnates within the community. Without steps to take action, there's no way for that impact to travel. And with us being able to have access to information in our fingertips at all times, and the knowledge that we can have with just a click of a button, it's so hard to be able to feel as if we can contribute more. And without a way for that impact to go further, there's no way for us to feel that we feel fulfilled and connected to our cause. And so that's why I created Curicub, because I did not want to have to wait for a pathway to fall into my lap to be able to give consistent change to my community that I wanted to serve. Curicub was built on the idea of taking awareness into action, and instead of me trying to join an existing pediatric cancer organization, I instead wanted to show students how important and how powerful it is when awareness meets action and how crazy of an impact that it can create. And so using this idea of what Curicub was built on, we were able to bake cookies and make meals for kids at Chalk at the Ronald McDonald House Charities and walk alongside them as they tried to raise money for pediatric cancer patients and research. And we were able to donate over 1,100 books and toys for kids at Chalk and raise over $1,000 for patient care initiatives, all because of the idea of using awareness alongside action. And it was honestly amazing to see, and it moved me because I was able to see 200 active students exemplify this idea for the entire year as we tried to bring this impact to all the communities. And that really touched me because it proved how important this idea was. But what was also important was the people that were being affected by this impact, that were able to receive that impact. And what that means is that during one time in my junior year, when I had the opportunity to go and recruit more members and to share what the Cure Club's purpose and mission was, I was able to meet many councilmen and women and parents and students and teachers from the school and from other schools and talk about how cancer shaped them and how this impact was so transformational in their lives. And I had the opportunity to meet a man who was so touched by this movement that we were able to do, how cancer affected him in his life, that in the middle of the gym, he just broke down crying. And I started to get teary-eyed too, because it was for the first time that I felt truly feeling that my work made a genuine impact in my community. And it was through this, since the past 1.5 years, that has kept me to consistently show up again and again. And so this moment cannot be replicated by social media and advocacy alone. When I saw how the exemplification from our Cure Club volunteers being transformed and being able to meet all these teachers and staff, it cannot be replicated by a social media advocacy and awareness alone. It takes action. And social media cannot replace heartfelt fulfillment. And what that means is when we go on social media, we often try to send stories about how we should boost and spread the causes of why it's important to support. And when combined with the habit of doom scrolling, which I can assure that it happens to me a lot of times and it probably relates to you as well, when combined these two ideas together, it can create a really toxic cycle of feeling overwhelmed and helpless. And it goes a little something like this. When we see a post and we open a post and we see a cause that we think matters, we can feel anxious, and then we just scroll. And then we see another post, and then we feel angry, and then we scroll. And we see another post, and we feel sad, and we scroll. And we see another post, and we feel maybe inspired, and then we scroll. But every time when we engage with this, we are going through so many motions at such a fast pace, and to do this on a consistent basis of hours upon hours on end, we start to feel numb at all the awareness and all the injustices that are happening in our society. And we can also feel helpless as it looks like the world is falling apart in a 9:16 aspect ratio high definition for $800, right? It just seems so helpless, and that's why volunteering is such an important way to resolve that, because it gives a pathway to resolve that feeling of helplessness. According to a 2023 JAMA Network Open study, volunteering was linked to lower odds of anxiety for kids and adolescents. But what was also important to note is that volunteering lowers anxiety for everyone. If we're being honest, all of us can share the same emotions of feeling helpless and feeling overwhelmed. And volunteering should be able as a channel for all of us to take a part in. And that was one of the ways, and all these lessons that I was able to learn from boiled down to a time when I went online after my friend shared a social media post about how we can help kids on the autism spectrum. It showed that activism empowers and makes us feel grounded in the causes that we are aware of. Going back to the post about autism, it was a way to see how the advocacy layers that to be more connected to. When we first see a cause that we want to help on social media, we can ask ourselves, why does this cause matter in general? When I saw the post, I saw the important statistics and stories about all the right reasons to care for. And I was able to finally be aware of. It answered the question, why does it matter in general? It gave me awareness and it gave me a problem. And so now I wanted to be able to solve it. And so I had to ask myself, how can I personally connect to the cause? How can my memories and experiences helped me to go and make a difference for the cause that I feel values to support. And autism didn't really affect me the same way that cancer had, but music had. I've been playing piano since I was 5, and I really enjoyed being able to see people's faces light up when I'm able to share a piece with them on the concert or in their home and be able to talk with them and communicate with them through that. And I wanted to be able to use music as a way to help kids develop their social and communication skills. And it showed me how powerful it is, and a misconception that I had was that personal connection to a cause does not have to directly affect you at that time that you learn about it, but also it also doesn't have to be a life-changing experience for you to connect to it like grief. It can simply be a skill that you love, an interest that you have, or an idea that you really care for again and again. Just as simple as that. And that's why it's so important to be able to connect to causes like that, to find the real reason why you can show up again and again, rather than just saying, oh, it matters. And what was so important and what was really done correctly by my friend was that she provided a way to get involved. And that's what a lot of social media advocacy doesn't do nowadays. It just makes people feel stuck about not knowing where to take the care that they have. By showing an organization for me to volunteer with, I was able to follow up. And I was able, for the past 2 years, to volunteer and teach kids on the autism spectrum about the pieces that they wanted to learn about and be able to open up in that sort of way. And I felt really fulfilled because if I never had done that, if I had never joined the organization in the first place, I would have never been able to see these kids' faces light up. And volunteering also gives more side benefits than just being fulfilled. Like I said before with anxiety, it was volunteering at the Mozart and Me allowed me to get an amazing mentor for life advice and a letter of recommendation and all these amazing friends that I was able to have if I never took the chance on my awareness about autism and to join an organization. And that's truly what activism is, by being able to take awareness and turn it into action to deliver tangible impact. Now, when I was trying to create a title for my speech, I was thinking of what a term to define the individuals who took awareness alongside action. And I found the term super volunteer. And I thought in the fashionable sense, to make it dramatic and sound cool, I labeled it the death of a super volunteer. But as I started to think more about it, I realized that it was too dramatic for the talk. Because a super volunteer is an individual who has unlimited time, unlimited energy to create an organization whenever they feel a cause matters to them. But that's simply not the case for many of us. A super volunteer is essentially a super you. By being able to understand how to turn a cause and connect it to yourself and take that action from that awareness that you learn about the cause and why it matters, you deliver so much impact to the communities that you serve and be able to transform yourself as well. And so that's what is really important in this day and age. Thank you so much.